And we are live for Thursday night football. It is week 6. We are a month and a half into the season now. Going to be a very fun Thursday night football game again. Rewind, 1 week from today. We were talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Atlanta Falcons, calling that game going to be high scoring on this live stream. And then here's another game tonight, a really exciting, potentially very high scoring game tonight between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. Going to break down my thoughts on all the most important players for fantasy in this game, what I think is going to happen in this game. And then we are, of course, going to get to tons of start-sit questions. And we're going to be prioritizing, as always, the Thursday night start-sits on the Thursday night live stream. It's week 6, everyone. Shout out to everybody already in the live stream. Smash the like button. Hit the subscribe button. We're just getting started here. Excited to get after it. All right, let's start with the 49ers because I expect a very good game from the 49ers offense. I am more confident in the 49ers offense tonight than I am the Seattle Seahawks offense, though I do think the Seahawks offense has a lot of potential as well. Brock Purdy ranks his quarterback 8 this week in the Walter Picks app. I like Brock Purdy a lot this week. The Seahawks, guys, if we just look at the matchup here for a second for Brock Purdy and what has been going on with the Seahawks defense, Daniel Jones, guys, had 22 fantasy points versus the Seahawks defense just a few days ago. They're dealing with tons and tons of injuries on this defense. I think 4 starters are out in this game for the Seahawks on the defensive side of the ball. Jared Goff also had 27 points the week before that. And the other quarterbacks that the Seahawks played, they played Bo Nix in his first NFL career game. Then they played Jacoby Brissett. And then they played Skylar Thompson / Tim Boyle. So the 2 reasonable QBs they played, if you want to put Daniel Jones in that category, both went over 22 fantasy points. Purdy's probably going over 22 fantasy points tonight, guys. He's a very high floor, solid fantasy start. I feel great starting him. Really the only QBs I think that you should probably be starting over Brock Purdy, Jayden Daniels and Lamar, obviously in that game. I think Brock Purdy versus Kyler is honestly pretty close. I'd be fine going Kyler. I'd also be fine going Brock in that one. I'd play Jalen Hurts over Brock Purdy. I'd play Dak over Purdy too in that game versus the Lions. I'd be fine playing Purdy over Caleb Williams. He's in a good spot too, though, versus the Jags. And then Jordan Love versus Purdy, I think, is close as well. But I'm going to play Purdy over Joe Burrow. I'm fine doing that. I'm fine playing Purdy over Geno Smith tonight, playing him over Kirk Cousins. I'm fine playing Purdy over CJ Stroud as well this week. Josh Allen, yep, I'm gladly playing Brock Purdy over Josh Allen. Josh Allen's borderline not startable this week with some other good options on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. All right, so I feel very good about Brock Purdy's chances to have multiple touchdowns in this game and have a chance to go over 300 passing yards in this game, especially if the game is close. Purdy's going over 300 yards. I think his passing line is a pretty solid one to be looking at if you're into the props. Jordan Mason's a must start. He is this year's Kyron Williams, because Jordan Mason is this year's Kyron Williams. Whether or not he wins leagues in the fantasy playoffs from weeks 1 to week 6, he's been a fantasy football league winner so far. If you have Jordan Mason, you're in a great spot to make it to your league's playoffs. Jordan Mason ranks as a top 10 running back again this week. Jordan Mason, let's just pull up Jordan Mason quick here on YouTube Live. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, guys, I'm telling you, come to the YouTube Live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I can share my screen on the YouTube Live. I can pull up comments on screen on the YouTube Live. Right now, we're looking at Jordan Mason's stats on the YouTube Live. Let me pull up let's actually just go to the game logs here and look at some of the ranks in here. Jordan Mason has the 3rd most rushing yards per game in the NFL to running back position, 107 rushing yards per game this season. He's averaging over half a rushing touchdown per game as well. And when it comes to rushing attempts, guys, there is no running back in the NFL with more rushing attempts than Jordan Mason. He doesn't have a game with under 14 carries. Last week was his fewest carries of the season. He had 14 carries last week. He still had 89 rushing yards. Didn't score a touchdown, but man, I mean, he's in this workhorse role, and this game should be high scoring. Jordan Mason obviously needs to be started in every spot. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, the bazooka, they also both need to be started tonight. I like actually Ayuk, I think, has a slightly safer floor, and they both have really high ceilings. I would argue Deebo's ceiling is actually a little bit higher than Ayuk's still because of the rushing potential. I think Deebo has arguably the highest wide receiver ceiling of like all wide receivers in fantasy because he's got the potential for massive games on the ground and through the air. But both these guys have an elite ceiling. Both these guys need to be started in almost all spots. Like Ayuk for Jaden Reed? No, you're starting Jaden Reed in that one. Ayuk ranks as wide receiver 14, Deebo wide receiver 11. Some receivers I'm starting over them this week: A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Drake London, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. It doesn't look like Malik Neighbors is going to play this week. If he plays, obviously I'd start him. But yeah, if I'm choosing between Neighbors and Ayuk and Debo, I'm just going Ayuk and Debo. I don't think Neighbors is going to play this week. He has not practiced fully yet with the concussion. It's not looking great for him right now. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, I'm telling you, come to the YouTube Live. The link is right in the TikTok bio. I can share my screen on the YouTube Live. It's all the same information, but it's a better live streaming viewing experience. All right, so we're starting Brock Purdy with a lot of confidence. We're starting Jordan Mason with a ton of confidence. Debo and Ayuk also need to be started. And then George Kittle, I don't know how you could possibly bench him with the landscape of tight ends. Guys, George Kittle is averaging the most fantasy points per game among tight ends this season. He's second in target share, second in air yards, first in fantasy points per game. He has not had a bad game. What other tight end can you point to and really say he has not had a bad game? His worst game of the season came against the Jets in week 1. He still had 8 fantasy points in that game. He's been a top 10 tight end every single game that he's played. He missed 1 game in week 3. And then all the other 3 games after he played the Jets, which were comparable matchups to the Seahawks tonight, finished as a top 4 tight end. So yeah, you have to be starting George Kittle. He scored a touchdown in his last 3 games. He's not coming off the field. He had 12 targets last week. I mean, he's really been a fantastic pick in fantasy, despite battling through the injuries. He needs to be started. And I do think George Kittle, like all tight ends, he has a little bit of a scary floor still because there's a lot of weapons in this offense. It could be a Debo, Ayuk, a Jordan Mason night, and we only see a few targets, few catches for Kittle, but that's just not been the case so far this season. He needs to be started really, unless, especially in a week without Travis Kelce, like Ferguson. I think Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride, good arguments to start them over Kittle. You probably don't have all those guys, though. You probably don't have 2 of those 3 guys. But yeah, Kittle arguably is tight end 1 this week, a real argument for that. That's all the 49ers that you should start, though. I don't want to start this Matthew Wright character, the backup kicker that they signed, because Jake Moody got hurt. I lost it in one of my leagues, by the way, because of Jake Moody's injury last week. Brutal stuff, man. I hate kickers when it comes to fantasy. But Matthew Wright, he ranks as kicker 10 in our app. I prefer not to sign a kicker, not to start a kicker in fantasy that's right off the street, even though this game's supposed to be high scoring. No thanks for me on Matthew Wright. So yeah, start Purdy, start Mason, start Debo, start Ayuk, start Kittle. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Start the whole offense, basically. One of these guys will likely disappoint, but the other 3 of them are going to smash. The other 4 of them are going to smash. I think Purdy's got the highest floor, honestly, of the group with how I feel about this offense heading into this game. So some interesting notes. I think the 49ers, by the way, they're only 3.5-point favorites in this game. I think they should be favored by much more than that in this game. The 49ers, almost 50% of the possessions for the 49ers this season have reached the red zone or scored. That's second best in the NFL. Almost half of their drives are getting to the red zone. They're in touchdown scoring drives almost half the time. That's, again, second best in the NFL. The problem for the 49ers, and they've got brutal losses to the Cardinals and Rams this season, they rank 30th in the league at converting their red zone possessions into touchdowns. After last year, they were the number 1 team in the NFL. They converted 2/3 of their red zone possessions last season into touchdowns that led the NFL. This season, they rank 30th, bottom 3 in the NFL. They're ahead of like the Panthers and like the Pats, and that's it. I mean, brutal stuff. And I think this is going to regress a little bit towards what we would expect a little bit more from them. It's not going to be the 2023 levels without McCaffrey maybe, but they're going to get closer to 50%. Why not tonight in a matchup against a injured Seahawks defense that just got torched by Daniel Jones? The other notable thing here for this matchup for the 49ers offense with the Daniel Jones stuff, Daniel Jones, he's been much better than people expected this season. He really hasn't been bad, but you got to keep the context in mind for this matchup too, and what we saw from the Seahawks defense last week. Daniel Jones, guys, he scored 22 fantasy points against the Seahawks defense without Malik Neighbors and without Devin Singletary. I mean, crazy stuff, really crazy stuff. And yeah, so Brock Purdy, I'd be pretty surprised if he went under 20 fantasy points tonight. I feel pretty good about him. I'm gladly starting Brock Purdy over Josh Allen, who has the toughest QB matchup that you could have against the Jets. Arguably, maybe the Broncos are a little tougher than the Jets, but the Jets have been number 1 in terms of points allowed this season to quarterbacks in fantasy. So yeah, I'm gladly starting Brock Purdy in this spot on Thursday night. All right, let's go to the Seahawks side of the ball. So again, in terms of the game, I think the 49ers offense really succeeds in this one, and they win the game. And I think they probably cover the 3.5 as well. On the Seahawks side of the ball, though, I think there's a good chance they can keep it competitive with how the 49ers defense has looked at times. Geno Smith is startable. Like, I would actually start Geno Smith, I think, over Josh Allen also. Kyler had 25 versus the 49ers last week. Again, I think the 49ers are going to put up a lot of points in this game. So Geno's going to be forced to throw, and Geno's been throwing, guys. The Seahawks, part of the reason I like Geno's been back-to-back games over 22 fantasy points. The Seahawks are one of the most pass-heavy teams in the NFL right now. One of the most pass-heavy teams in the entire NFL is the Seattle Seahawks. Not really what I expected coming into the season, but Geno's got exactly one passing touchdown in every single game this season. Guys, Geno Smith leads the NFL in pass attempts per game. He's at almost 40 pass attempts per game. He's had 3 games with at least 40 pass attempts. I mean, really crazy stuff. He actually leads the NFL in both pass attempts and pass completions. And he's first in passing yards per game too. Passing yards really actually ends up just being a volume metric. How many pass attempts did you have? And when you're like Geno and you have 40 pass attempts, when you look across the league, some guys are averaging less than half the pass attempts of Geno. And he's got amazing receivers, right? He's got DK Metcalf. Jackson Smith and Jigba has got to show some consistency and step up in this game too. I know there's going to be some JSN questions. I see you think JSN's going over 46.5. We'll get to JSN in a second. I think that's a pretty fair line for him. I would take the over if I had to choose. We do have a free player prop, of course, on the live today. We're going to get to that momentarily after I wrap up my Seahawks thoughts. But yeah, Geno Smith is startable. He's startable, and I would start him over Josh Allen. I prefer Brock Purdy over Geno. The only other quarterback I would start over Geno that I wouldn't start over Purdy is Joe Burrow. I would start Joe Burrow over Geno with how Burrow's been playing. But I'm starting Geno over Kirk Cousins, who just threw for 500 yards. I'm starting Geno over a CJ Stroud against the Pats defense. I prefer a Geno in this game environment versus Stroud in the Pats game environment. I'm playing Purdy over Allen. Does Kittle have a big day? He's been having only big days, really. He has not had a game under 8 fantasy points. His last 3 games, he's ranked as a top 4 tight end in all of them. He has back-to-back-to-back games with a touchdown. So yeah, you got to feel pretty good about Kittle. And I still can't get that touchdown versus the Pats out of my head. I think that Kittle touchdown versus the Patriots, if you guys don't remember that play, like go look up that play. I think that might have been the best touchdown of the season, just from like a pure, like impressive catch standpoint. He literally caught a touchdown over triple coverage on that play. So Kittle's been balling, man. He really hasn't had a bad game. So DK Metcalf, he's got to be started. DK Metcalf, Debo, Ayuk, these guys are all in the same tier this week, all have a massive ceiling. DK Metcalf disappointed a bit last week, 7.5 points. It was the second worst game of the season after back-to-back games over 100 yards heading into last week, but he still has at least 4 catches and 50 yards now in 4 straight games. He's got a pretty decent floor, and we know what the ceiling is for Metcalf. And again, if you're with me, the 49ers offense is going to have success. And we see how much the Seahawks are passing, almost 50 pass attempts, 40 pass attempts per game. Then, yeah, you got to be in on Metcalf. You have to start DK Metcalf, like almost definitely. He's got over 30% of the Seahawks air yards every single game this season. He's got over almost a third of their air yards every single game. He's got at least 6 targets in 4 straight. He's averaging 8 targets a game. You got to be starting DK Metcalf for sure. And then Kenneth Walker also definitely needs to be started. Kenneth Walker versus Jordan Mason. I'd prefer Jordan Mason. But both these guys are top 12 running backs this week. Both of these guys are RB1s this week on Thursday night. Again, this is going to be a fun game with a lot of fantasy relevant players. We're starting Purdy. We're starting Kittle. We're starting Debo. We're starting Ayuk. We're starting Jordan Mason. We're starting Kenneth Walker. We're starting DK Metcalf. All 7 of those guys are very good starts. At least 5 of those 7, I think, are going to outperform what you would hope and be massive for fantasy this week. And there's a chance all 7 go off in this game if the Seahawks can keep this game close and push the 49ers into a shootout of a game. This has the 3rd highest over-under of the week, by the way, this game. I think it's only the Cowboys and the Lions, and maybe the Cardinals-Packers are the next game that has a really high over-under. That's it, I think. Those are the only 2 games. Oh, maybe it's the Commanders-Ravens, actually, that's ahead of them. So yeah, Kenneth Walker's a great start. Kenneth Walker only 19 rushing yards. They completely abandoned the run last week. I would be shocked if Kenneth only has 5 carries in this game like last week. That was really odd against the Giants. I mean, the Seahawks are coming off a really bad loss, guys, against the Giants. This is an embarrassing loss for them. It was embarrassing that they only gave Kenneth Walker 5 carries in this game, and there's almost no chance he only gets 5 carries this game tonight. But he showed he's also in a pretty good receiving role all of a sudden. Like he came back from the injury. He's got 11 catches in his last 2 games, 7 catches last week. He led the backfield in route participation, routes run. He played 67% of the snaps, which is a season high. He's playing at least 2/3 of the snaps tonight on a short week. And Sharp was involved in the passing game too. I think they combined for like 11 catches or something crazy like that. But 20% target share for Kenneth, super encouraging there. He's now 3rd. Guys, Kenneth Walker ranks 3rd best among running backs in the NFL in targets per game. He's only played 3 games, so small sample there, but still, that's definitely, way better pass game usage than I would have expected. Makes him an even stronger start in PPR. Again, I still would start Mason over Kenneth with the matchup versus the Seahawks defense being a little bit better. And again, I think the 49ers offense basically has no chance to be stopped tonight by the Seahawks defense that just got torched by Daniel Jones without Malik Neighbors and Devin Singletary. So Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's one of the tougher start sits of the week for sure. I'm expecting a lot of JSN start sits tonight. We're going to get to, by the way, hundreds of start sits in this live stream coming up in like literally 5-10 minutes. So don't go anywhere. If I didn't get to your start sit, I'm talking through every single player. By the way, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. The link is in the TikTok bio. I'm sharing screen to all the players' information that we're talking about. It's just a better viewing experience. I promise you, it's the same information. You're 2 presses of your finger away from the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I will answer comments from both though. Shout out to everybody. No matter where you're watching this live, shout out to you. I do appreciate everyone tuning in. All right, so JSN, he's averaging 51 yards per game, but he's been a pretty boom bust fantasy option. He's got 2 games now under 7 fantasy points. He's got 3 games over 13 fantasy points. He's over 13 fantasy points, though, in 3 of his last 4 games. I still think Jackson Smith-Njigba is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. His yards per route run this season, not great, only a 1.3 yards per route run. I still think he's better than that. He has at least 7 targets in 3 of his last 4. I still, go back to week 2 against the Pats. He had 16 targets in that game. Guys, targets are earned. And you don't get 16 targets in a game without being a very good wide receiver in the NFL. He followed that up with only 3 targets versus the Dolphins. But that game versus the Dolphins, that was against a non-Tua-led Dolphins. That whole game, you can basically throw out the window. I mean, the offense did not need to really throw much in that game. And again, the Seahawks, Geno Smith leads the NFL in pass attempts per game. So it's okay to start these receivers in fantasy. I feel pretty good starting JSN. We got him ranked right at wide receiver 30. Him versus Tank Dell, I think that's close. I think I would honestly lean JSN over Tank Dell. I'm a little skeptical about Tank Dell, even with Nico out. Tank Dell has not quite looked like himself. I feel like Tank Dell's got a lower floor than JSN in a comparable ceiling. JSN versus Amari Cooper. That's a really tough one with Deshaun still starting and how bad the Browns have looked. I would feel similarly about that one. I think I'd lean JSN for the floor. I think he arguably has a comparable ceiling to Amari. Amari should have a really high ceiling, but with Deshaun and how the Browns offense has looked, I don't know. George Pickens versus JSN. I think that one's pretty close too. I think I would probably lean JSN there as well. Brian Thomas versus JSN. That one, I think I'd go Brian Thomas. Olave, I think I'd go Olave. Flowers, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Smith, Darnell Mooney, I'd go all those guys over JSN. JSN versus Roma Dunze, I'd go JSN. JSN versus Wandale. I actually saw that one in the TikTok live earlier. I'm going JSN over Wandale, guys. I know I'm like a known Wandale hater, but come on. JSN's got to have a higher ceiling than Wandale Robinson in the Elijah Moore role. JSN will actually get some deep targets at times. We've seen games. We saw 2 games now where he had over 75 air yards. I don't think Wandale's cracked even like 50 air yards in a game this season. 8 targets a game for JSN. That's pretty strong. He's actually run the 2nd most routes in the NFL. Again, because the Seahawks throw the ball a ton. He's not coming off the field. So JSN startable, not a must start, but startable for sure. I feel decent about JSN in my lineups in this game, especially with what I expect from the 49ers offense and the Seahawks playing from behind. And we've seen the Seahawks be willing to throw the ball a lot. All right, Tyler Lockett, he's startable also in deeper leagues, but not a guy I'm really excited to start. Tyler Lockett has not scored a touchdown yet this season. I think that is actually a sneaky prop tonight. Tyler Lockett to score his first touchdown in the season in a game that could be really high scoring. A historically good touchdown scorer has not scored a single touchdown, and it's not like he hasn't had chances. He has a back-to-back games with targets in the end zone. So I don't hate that, but for fantasy, I'm not super in on Lockett. I have him a little bit behind JSN. He's had better games than JSN. His air yards have actually been a little bit better than JSN over the course of the season, but he doesn't have that high-end upside of 16 targets in a game that we've seen from JSN. He's just a little less exciting, a lower ceiling than JSN, in my opinion. So yeah, I like JSN a decent bit more than Lockett. Lockett's startable, though, in certain spots in deeper leagues with bye weeks hitting. I'd start Lockett over Ladd McConkey, for example. I'd start Lockett over Trey Tucker, for example. I'd start Lockett over Xavier Legette. Josh Downs looks like he's not going to play. I'd start Lockett there. Lockett versus Michael Wilson, I think, is pretty close. That one is really close, honestly. I think I'd lean Lockett in the game tonight, but Michael Wilson definitely has a case there. I start Lockett over all the Patriots receivers. I'd start Lockett, him versus Ridley. I think I'd go Ridley. Him versus Shaheed. Shaheed hasn't practiced this week, so I'd probably go Lockett there. So him versus Judy, that one's close too. I mean, these Browns receivers are tough to trust, man. Really tough to trust. Browns should be playing from behind, though, too, in a pass-heavy game script, but I think I'd probably go Lockett over Judy too. It's much safer floor there. All right, so that's all my thoughts on the Seahawks. Jason Myers, not a terrible start tonight. He ranks well in our app. I'm fine starting Jason Myers for the kicker people out there. That's all I'll have to say about the kickers. But again, I think the 49ers win this game. All right, let's go to let me jump to the free player prop of the night, and then we'll get to the start sit segment of this live. So just to recap super quick: start Jordan Mason, start Kenneth Walker, start Brandon Ayuk, start Deebo Samuel, start DK Metcalf, start George Kittle, start Brock Purdy. I think the upside's probably worth it with JSN and Geno, and it's maybe worth it with Lockett and Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings is going to be a thorn in Deebo and Ayuk and Kittle's side, I think, a little bit with how well he played when some guys were out. It's almost impossible to leave him off the field entirely. He's playing over half the snaps in back-to-back weeks still with Deebo back. He's got 10 targets in the last 2 games. I think in super deep leagues, Jennings is a reasonable dart throw. I would definitely start Lockett, though, over Jennings. And then do not start Sharp. Charbonnet's just a high upside handcuff at this point. We saw what he was with Kenneth out. Massive role for Sharp. He's one of the higher upside handcuffs for sure, but not startable with Kenneth back. Only in the deepest of leagues, I'm sure we're going to see some crazy Sharp start sits on the live tonight. I'm not starting, Noah Fant. I don't want either defenses in this game. In Garendo, I think he's like rosterable in deeper leagues. He's the clear backup. Excited to see him hopefully get some more touches tonight, but definitely not startable, obviously. All right, let's get to some of the start sits here in a second. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. The link is in the TikTok bio. I can pull comments up on screen, and I can share screen to the players and start sit comparisons we're talking through on the YouTube live too. Just a little bit better reviewing experience. Link is right in the TikTok bio. All right, let's get to the free player prop. We went 2 for 3 on the player props last week. Let's get to the one tonight. We are now 12-8 on the season. So 66% still on the season. Decent start this season. I got Brandon Ayuk over 4.5 receptions tonight. You can find this at like minus 125 in most places right now. Brandon Ayuk really came alive last week. Both him and T. Higgins showed that they are still high-end wide receiver 2s for fantasy. Guys, Brandon Ayuk, he had a 38% target share last week. Back 2 of his last 3 games, Ayuk now is over a 33% target share. He looked like a beast last week, and this is a very, very good matchup versus the Seahawks. I expect Brock Purdy to have a very successful game tonight. So the free player prop is Brandon Ayuk over 4.5 receptions. I like this one a lot. I like both Ayuk and Deebo a lot tonight, but with the game that we've seen from Ayuk last week and in week 3, I think the ceiling is massive, and there's almost no chance he gets fewer than 3 catches. He had 2 catches back in week 4, but that was a non-competitive game against the Pats. Every competitive game, he's got at least 4, and he's got at least 5 in 2 of his last 3. So yeah, I like Ayuk over 4.5 receptions. If you're going for the yards, I like Ayuk and Deebo yards also. Again, I think Lockett to score a touchdown is a sneaky one tonight too, but the official one for me is Ayuk over 4.5 receptions. All right, Shaheed or Jennings? Yeah, so I don't think Shaheed's going to play. So make other plans. Shaheed's probably not going to play. Josh Downs is probably not going to play. Make other plans there also. I don't think Malik Neighbors is going to play. You got to make other plans there as well. Like some of these guys in tough start sits with the game environment I expect tonight, like you got to start the guys tonight. This is one of those situations. If you're with me on the leans there of Neighbors not playing, Shaheed not playing, Josh Downs not playing, then yeah, you got to start Jawan Jennings in those spots. If that's the best guy you have, that's fine. I'm fine doing that. All right, let's go to some more of the start sits here. DK, Flowers, Malik, BTJ, and Jaden Reed pick 3. All right, so we're starting Jaden Reed this week. So let's just take him out. This is a pick 2. We're starting Jaden Reed. And we can't, for the Thursday night start sits, I don't know how you could possibly hold out hope for Malik Neighbors. If you got DK Metcalf, you got Deebo Samuel, you got Brandon Ayuk. I mean, even if you have JSN or Lockett or Jennings, like I think there's a good argument to start these guys in place of Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors does less in practice on Thursday. This was the report 4 hours ago. He did less in practice today than he did yesterday. It's looking super concerning for Malik Neighbors. So yeah, I'm definitely concerned about Malik Neighbors, and I think you got to make other plans. So we're going to take him out of this start sit too. So this is a pick 2 between DK Flowers and Brian Thomas Jr. I think this one's going to be DK and Brian Thomas Jr. But man, Zay Flowers, he's got a good game, good matchup, game environment this week too. Yeah, it's super close, man, between Brian Thomas Jr. and Zay Flowers. I'm starting DK Metcalf over both of those guys, though. And I'm starting Purdy over Geno. I think Purdy over Caleb Williams is very reasonable also. Like, that one's super close. In the Walter Picks app, we actually have Caleb Williams projected ahead of Purdy. But, guys, Daniel Jones just had 22 points without Malik Neighbors versus the Seahawks defense. I think the floor and ceiling is really strong for Purdy tonight. There's a decent chance the Seahawks offense can keep up in this game. It's only a 3.5 point spread, which I was pretty surprised about. So yeah, I'm okay going Purdy over Caleb Williams. I really feel like the floor is just a little bit better for Purdy, and the ceilings are arguably similar. I mean, maybe the ceiling's just a little bit higher for Caleb Williams because the Jaguars have been horrible, absolutely terrible. But yeah, I personally lean Brock Purdy over Caleb Williams, so I have to make that start sit. Yeah, so Brian Thomas Jr. versus Zay Flowers is a super tough one. Tougher matchup for Brian Thomas Jr., a really good matchup for Zay. That game should be really high scoring with Zay Flowers too. I think I'd lean Zay over Brian Thomas Jr. this week, but that's close. But yeah, I'm starting DK Metcalf over both of them. Juwan Jennings or Tank Bigsby at flex because Cook probably won't play. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of tough Thursday night start sits here this week. I don't think James Cook's going to play either. Anyone that has not practiced yet, you generally should just expect them not to play. Like if you haven't practiced yet, we're heading into the last practice of the week tomorrow. That's not a good sign. Obviously, things can change tomorrow's practice report. But yeah, right now, I think you got to plan for no James Cook. You got to plan for no Malik Neighbors. You got to plan for no Josh Downs. And there's one more we were talking through as well. Rashid Shaheed. I think you got to plan no Rashid Shaheed too. Reed or Tyreek. Yeah, so the Dolphins are on bye. So yeah, that one's Reed for sure. But rest of the season, I think arguably it's Tyreek. All right, let's get to this one though. Juwan Jennings or Tank Bigsby. So I think this one is actually really close. I mean, Bigsby looked great last week. Bigsby earned more work. He gets the Bears though. Matchup for Jennings tonight against the Seahawks. If this is a PPR league, I think you kind of have to go Juwan Jennings. The Bears have been not as bad versus running backs as they have been versus receivers. They've been a pretty good matchup for running backs, what I mean there. Bigsby obviously coming off a massive game. He's looked better on the ground this season than Travis Etienne. You got to think he earned a little bit more work, but similar like Bigsby Etienne, similar to the Rachaad White and Bucky Irving situation, similar to the Breece Hall, Braylon Allen situation. All three of those situations are very, very similar. Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, and Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. All of them are in similar situations where arguably the backup has looked better and deserves more work. But here's the thing, guys. None of these backups, I don't think, are really going to smash in fantasy unless there's injuries still. Like, Breece Hall is still going to play more snaps than Braylon Allen, no matter how good Braylon Allen looks. Tank Bigsby is still going to lose a lot of work to Travis Etienne, no matter how much better he looks than Etienne. That one, honestly, I think is the most murky. The same thing with Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Like, Rachaad White's still going to get the bulk of the receiving work. He's still going to play probably over half the snaps. So none of these guys are like smash starts, really. And Braylon Allen's in a good matchup this week, too. He's arguably startable this week also. But Bigsby, I think, is the most uncertain with Etienne dealing with somewhat of an injury over those other guys. You could argue Bijan and Algier. They're in that tier a little bit this season also. I'm not as concerned about Bijan, but there's some injury stuff going on there as well. Some limited in practice injury stuff going on there with Bijan. Yeah, I'm going Jennings. I'm going Jennings in this potentially really high scoring game over Tank Bigsby in a PPR league. Half PPR, I think I'd probably lean Bigsby. Reed or Debo? Yes, it's Reed. It's Reed over Debo. And if you have that start sit decision, I mean, your team is insane because both these guys are top 12 receivers. Like Jaden Reed, though, he's top 10. Debo and Ayuk, they're both like back end wide receiver ones, high end wide receiver twos. Jaden Reed is just a wide receiver one right now. We'll see if Christian Watson plays this week. Even if Watson plays, I think Jaden Reed is a really good start, though. All right, Geno or Baker? Yeah, this one's Geno. Very, very easily, this one's Geno. Baker Mayfield, he gets the Saints in a game for Spencer Rattler. I mean, let's see if Spencer Rattler can have a competitive game. There's a real big downside with Spencer Rattler for sure. Love or Geno? Yeah, that one I think I lean towards Love in that game. Yeah, I think I would go Love over Geno. Here's the quarterbacks I'm starting over Purdy. Let's skip the QB start sits because I think these are the QBs and the tight ends really, really straightforward to address everyone's comments at the same time. At quarterback, you're starting Jane Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love over Brock Purdy. I only thing I'd correct there, I would start Brock Purdy over Caleb Williams, and I think I'd honestly start Brock Purdy over Jordan Love too. So Dak, Hurts, Kyler, Lamar, Jaden. That's the only guys I'm starting over Brock Purdy. Otherwise, start Brock Purdy. A really good spot tonight. Again, we just saw Daniel Jones throw for 22 fantasy points without Malik Neighbors against this defense. That's all sorts of injured. So I think Brock Purdy's a better option than Love and Caleb Williams. I would start Love and Caleb Williams, though, over Geno. And I would start Burrow over Geno, too, and then end of list. So we're starting Burrow, Love, Caleb, Purdy, Dak, Hurts, Kyler, Lamar, and Daniels all over Geno. And then it's Geno. I'm starting Geno over Kirk. I'm starting Geno. Let me pull up the QBs here on the YouTube Live. If you're just joining the YouTube Live, guys, smash the like button. We got a great Thursday night football game on our TV screens in just a couple of hours. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, come to the YouTube Live. I'm telling you, it's a better viewing experience. The must-starts tonight: Jordan Mason, Kenneth Walker, Ayuka the Bazooka, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, George Kittle, and Brock Purdy. All very good starts. At QB, we got Caleb Williams and Jordan Love projected ahead of Brock Purdy in the Walter Picks app. I personally would go Purdy over Love and over Caleb Williams, just purely based on what we saw from the Seahawks defense in back-to-back games from Goff and Daniel Jones over 22 points, but especially this game last week versus the Giants with no Malik Neighbors, a bottom 5 Giants offensive line. Darius Slayton destroyed them. That's part of the reason I'm really in on Ayuk tonight and Deebo tonight as well. But yeah, Brock Purdy, I think, has a really high floor in this game. The Seahawks also are willing to throw a lot. Geno Smith leads the NFL in pass attempts per game. Geno Smith leads the NFL in passing yards per game because passing yards, underratedly, is really just a volume stat, especially this early in the season. Why does Baker get no love? No, Baker Mayfield deserves some love, but he's still not a better option with the matchup against the Saints, against Spencer Rattler. The thing you got to understand about the game tonight, especially, is this is the third highest implied total game of the week. There's only 2 other games expected to have more points than this game tonight. It's the Commanders-Ravens game, and it's the Lions-Cowboys game. And I won't be shocked at all if this game tonight ends up being the highest scoring game of the week, like we saw last Thursday night, with how the Seahawks defense has looked and how willing the Seahawks have been to pass. So tonight we got Brock Purdy up against a defense that just allowed 22 fantasy points to Daniel Jones. And we got Geno Smith up against the 49ers team that's been pretty, mid against quarterbacks. They just allowed 25 points to Kyler. They haven't played the best QBs. Neither of these teams really played the best QBs. But they also, Geno Smith leads the NFL in pass attempts. So if you're with me that the 49ers offense is going to have a good game, then Geno's probably going to get close to 40-plus pass attempts. So he's startable too over Baker Mayfield in kind of a difficult matchup versus the Saints in a game that's going to have an extremely low implied game total, with Spencer Rattler playing. Spencer Rattler could implode. Guys, Mahomes had 14 points versus the Saints last week. Jalen Hurts only had 12 points versus the Saints. Dak had 15. What's the upside, man, for Baker this week? He deserves some respect with how he's played, and I'll give him that in the good matchups. He's averaging the 3rd most fantasy points per game this season, Baker Mayfield. He really only had one bad game, and he's had some difficult matchups, but this game's just not going to be a high-scoring game between the Bucs and the Saints. I don't think so. I'm fine starting both quarterbacks tonight over him. Deebo or Higgins? Yeah, this is a really tough one. We got them really close. I personally lean T. Higgins in most start sits this week. I want to start T. Higgins. We got T. Higgins ahead of Deebo and Ayuk and Metcalf tonight. I think I would start Higgins over all 3 of those guys. It's a good start sit to have because all 3 of those guys are top 14 receivers this week. All right, let's get to this one. Sam, help. Do I play DK tonight or play Garrett Wilson on Monday? Yeah, so I think now is the right time to be trying to sell Garrett Wilson. I'm starting all these top receivers tonight over Garrett Wilson. Ayuk, Metcalf, and Deebo. I'm starting all of them over Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson had 22 targets last week. And did he even have more points than Ayuk? It was probably pretty close. I don't think Ayuk ended up scoring a touchdown. He didn't. Ayuk had 8 catches for 147 yards on 12 targets. 8 catches, 147. Let's go to Garrett Wilson here, which is one spot behind him in the ranks. Garrett Wilson had less yards on 13 catches, 22 targets. He had less total yards. He did score a touchdown. Obviously, PPR, those catches were worth a lot. But yeah, I'm leaning Ayuk over Garrett Wilson. There's almost no chance we see another 20-plus target game for Garrett Wilson this week. Goff, yeah, I'm going to be playing both the quarterbacks tonight over Goff. I think it's going to be a really run-heavy game plan for the Lions versus the Cowboys, who have really struggled against the run. The Lions want to be a run-first team, and I think that's going to work pretty well from what we've seen from the Cowboys this season in every game, not against Najee Harris. They don't get to play Najee Harris this week. They got to play 2 very good running backs behind arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. Max, I do have a player prop for us tonight. Doesn't look like this one's a Thursday night start sit here. Deontay, J.K. Dobbins, Jacoby Myers. I think I lean Deontay over Myers this week, but not a Thursday night start sit. All right, player prop of the night is Ayuka the Bazooka over 4.5 receptions. He's hit this in 2 of his last 3. 2 of his last 3, by the way, he went over a 33% target share. We just saw Darius Slayton and Daniel Jones. He had 8 catches, 122, and a touchdown last week for Slayton. 6 catches for Wandale last week as well. I like Ayuk's reception over. I like his yards as well. But I think the receptions is a pretty good value tonight. We're 12-8 on the free player props. I also, as a longer odds one, not the official play tonight for me, but I think Tyler Lockett to score a touchdown is a pretty sneaky one. A pretty sneaky one. I don't know exactly what the odds are. I imagine they're pretty good. Let me pull it up actually really quick. I can pull it up. But Tyler Lockett has not scored a touchdown yet this season. Tyler Lockett is one of the best touchdown scorers in NFL history at the wide receiver position. I mean, he scored a lot of NFL touchdowns. Plus 240 I'm seeing on DraftKings is actually a little worse than I would have expected. But he has no touchdowns this season. He's got back-to-back games with end zone targets. I don't like that as a deeper play if you're looking for some better odds. But yeah, I like Ayuk over 4.5 receptions as a pretty safe one tonight. We got Purdy, Dak, or Fields. Yeah, so I'm going Dak over Purdy. I am. I think this matchup for Dak is great. This game environment for Dak is going to be really good. I think this is going to be a fun one from Dak, who also could throw a ton in this game. And I have a lot of confidence in the Lions offense versus the Cowboys too. Geno Smith just had 22 points against them. They really have had a pretty good floor for quarterbacks, the Lions this season. Only one touchdown, no quarterback over one passing touchdown versus the Lions. That probably changes this week too. I'm playing Geno over Fields for sure. Lockett versus Judy. I actually talked about this one when talking about Tyler Lockett and which wide receivers I'd start him over. I'm starting Lockett over Judy. Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. Lockett has a better floor and really a similar ceiling to Judy. I mean, there's just no floor for Judy or Amari. Their floors are both so low, even with the target volume and it's the snap percentages with Sean in that offense. JSN's a decent start. He's a good start, not a great start. I think that's how I would define it. McConkey versus Lockett is close too. McConkey, though, he's against the Broncos, so I think I'm fine going Lockett there. Starting receivers against the Broncos is just generally not a great idea. Let's do this comparison really quickly. I think he was also one of the guys I said I'd probably start Lockett over. And McConkey's looked good at times this season. Yeah, super close one. But yeah, I lean Lockett over McConkey as well. Alex Pierce, Josh Downs, Jawan Jennings. Yeah, so Josh Downs is not going to play. I don't think Josh Downs is going to play. So this one's Alec Pierce versus Jawan Jennings. And man, Alec Pierce is he like the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL? He's got to be. I think he's got to be one of the most efficient receivers in the NFL. Let's see. He's 2.8 yards per route run, but his yards per reception is 28.3 yards per reception for Alec Pierce. I think that's number one in the NFL. He doesn't have enough volume to hit it. But yeah, I'm going Jawan Jennings over Alec Pierce still. I actually think that it's Adonai Mitchell. Guys, Adonai Mitchell is the biggest winner from either Downs or Pittman missing time. It's Adonai Mitchell that's going to get on the field much more. And every time he's been on the field, he's getting targeted a lot. Like his target rate, the rate that he is targeted when he's on the field is actually really high for Adonai Mitchell. The problem is he's just not been on the field a lot. But when he's out there, they're really forcing him the ball. And I think he's going to find himself on the field much more if Downs or Pittman miss time. He only played 19 snaps last week, but he had 4 catches. He ran a total of 11 routes, and he had 7 targets. He was targeted on over half of his routes. And we're seeing this like really all season. He's not playing enough to be fantasy relevant, but as soon as he starts playing enough, I think he is going to be immediately fantasy relevant. I think we should add Adonai Mitchell in like 12-plus team leagues. Adonai Mitchell should not still be on the waiver wire with the injuries to both Pittman and Downs. Right? Pittman's also likely to miss. IR an option for Michael Pittman. Josh Downs is going to miss. I mean, Adonai Mitchell should be rostered in 100% of leagues right now. And yeah, I think Adonai Mitchell, I would prefer over Alec Pierce. Ayuk, Deontay, or James Conner at flex. Yeah, so I'm definitely starting Ayuk in the bazooka over Deontay Johnson. Him versus Conner is probably a little bit closer. I'll do all these guys, though. Deontay is going to project better than Ayuk. I would not start Deontay over Ayuk personally. After last week, yeah, it's Ayuk. I'm going Ayuk here. I think Deontay, maybe he's got a little bit better of a floor just in terms of his target volume. I think the ceiling's better for Ayuk. I kind of disagree with some of these boom bust percentages here. I mean, they're close, so they're super close. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variance between these two guys. Not a terrible matchup for Deontay, but he's coming off his worst game, his worst game with Andy Dalton of the season. Only 3 catches, 23 yards last week. He still saw 6 targets, but his lowest target share of the season. I do think that'll bounce back. But yeah, I'm going Ayuk in this matchup tonight. I think Ayuk has a better ceiling than Deontay. Jason or Olave? Yeah, so Olave is an interesting one. I think Olave's got to be started over JSN. I think the better question is Olave versus some of these other guys. And I think I would start Metcalf, Debo, Ayuk, all over Olave, but I'd start Olave over JSN. Ayuk, Zay, or BTJ. Yeah, I'm going Ayuk over Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going Ayuk over Zay Flowers as well. Caleb Williams or Josh Allen. Yeah, so you can't start Josh Allen this week. Like, you really can't. In Superflex leagues, of course, you can. But Josh Allen's like not a good start. Guys, Josh Allen has 3 bad games in 5 weeks. He's shown us he's got a really low floor. This whole passing attack, really. Josh Allen's passing attack, the Bills' passing attack. All of these guys in the passing attack have a really low floor every week because the Bills want to be a run-first team. And when they get leads, they become a run-first team. We saw that against the Dolphins in week 2. And we saw it a little bit in week 1 as well. The difference in week 1 for Josh Allen was he scored 2 of the rushing touchdowns. Like, when he participates in a lot of that rushing, that's where Josh Allen smashes. But we've now seen 3 games where he didn't participate in the rushing, and the passing game just wasn't there. They're lacking the necessary pass catchers. And now they get the Jets, the worst possible matchup for quarterbacks so far this season. So yeah, I'm fine benching Josh Allen for Caleb Williams. I'm starting both quarterbacks tonight over Josh Allen as well. Geno or Fields, I'm going Geno. I'm going both quarterbacks tonight over Fields. Hey, Sam, I need some help from my flex. I got Jameson Williams, Chase, Williams. You got 2 Williams here. Or Ramondre Stevenson, PPR. Maybe that's Javonte Williams. I assume that's Chase Brown. Not a Thursday night start sit here. Ramondre is looking like he's not going to play too, guys. Ramondre Stevenson has not practiced this week. Chase Brown, if he's the one you're asking about here, I do think, yeah, Chase Brown, he's going to be a pretty good option. But he also picked up an injury today. So I think I honestly lean on today's live. I lean Jameson, but Williams, Waymo, Jamo, but I think I might change my mind on the Sunday morning live about that. By the way, we're live every single Sunday morning too. And I'm gonna prioritize the Thursday night start sits tonight like I always do. But I will also be live Sunday answering hundreds and hundreds of start sits every Sunday as well. So if you got Sunday morning live start sits, don't worry, just come to the Sunday morning live. We'll probably get to them then. All right, tonight's game, Tony. Thanks. Currently have Marvin Harrison Jr., Reed, Brian Thomas Jr. starting. Recommend Ayuk over any of those. So I'm not starting Ayuk over Reed. Reed really needs to be started over all the receivers tonight, I think. I don't know if Christian Watson's going to go this week. Whether he does or not, I think Reed's going to be a good option for you. Brian Thomas Jr., he's been balling. He definitely is a decent start, but I'm not starting him over Ayuk. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't think I'm starting him over Ayuk either right now. Let's see this comparison here. Yeah, so I'm starting Ayuk over both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas. I'm starting Ayuk, though, and Marvin Harrison Jr. in this one. Brian Thomas, this is a difficult matchup for Brian Thomas. Bears have ranked number 7 against receivers this season. I think Brian Thomas, he might be matchup proof. He might be that good. He still has a good ceiling, but it's definitely a better matchup for Marv. I think that one's honestly a really close start sit. Marv has shown to have an even lower floor than Brian Thomas Jr. this season. That one's pretty close between Marv and Brian Thomas Jr. That's going to be a Sunday morning London time. Guys, we're on London time again this Sunday morning, by the way. Heads up about that. I'll be live a whole hour early on Sunday morning to make sure we get all the London time start sits in. Moss or Pierce? Oh, yikes, that's just gross. That's just a gross one. I think it's Moss, but Moss and Chase Brown are a little banged up right now. I think both were limited in practice today. So that's definitely something to monitor there for sure. All right, let's get back to some of these start sits. Amari Cooper or JSN? I think this is a good question. Like, I had Juwan Jennings. I think I'd start over Judy. I definitely would start JSN over Judy. And I think there's a good argument to go JSN over Amari also. It's a really tough one. And Amari, I think, projects a tiny bit better. I mean, look at the difference in these curves. Like, the ceiling, arguably is high for Amari with the volume he's seeing. Good matchup versus the Eagles. He had a big game week 3 against the Giants where he scored 2 TDs. I mean, the volume's been incredible, guys. Amari Cooper is 8th in the NFL in targets per game at receiver. 8th in the NFL in targets per game. Sam, I need your help. DK, Ayuk, Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., pick 3. Yes, those first 3. It's DK, Ayuk, and Evans over Marvin Harrison Jr. for sure. For sure. Do I go Laporta or Kraft this week? Yeah, that's a close one. I think I lean Laporta over Kraft just slightly, but it's definitely close. Yeah, I think I lean Laporta. I think we probably see the first big Laporta game of the season this year. But yeah, I'm going Jackson Smith and Jigba over Amari. I am. I mean, Amari's clearly disgruntled. The Browns have arguably the worst passing attack in the NFL. I actually don't think it's that arguable. Let me pull up Deshaun's stats for you for a second. And I think just looking at Deshaun again really quickly will convince everyone not to start Amari and Judy. You look at the efficiency for Deshaun Watson this season at 4.8 yards per attempt. That ranks 33rd in the NFL. He has not been over 5.5 yards per attempt in a game this season. Guys, Bryce Young has been more efficient than Deshaun this season. And Deshaun's been terrible. The offensive line is also bottom 3 in the NFL. Like, nothing's going right for the Browns. It's kind of an intriguing matchup versus the Eagles, but yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine benching Amari for JSN tonight. This game should be high scoring again. Let me pull this up again because I know some new people are in the live from when we first started. By the way, if you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button. It takes you 2 seconds. I promise you it helps me out so much more than you realize. Same thing in the TikTok live, guys. Hit the follow button. I do appreciate that a ton. I'm definitely going Deontay over JSN, seeing that one in the YouTube live. But let me just run through again what I expect to happen in this game. I expect the 49ers offense to put up 30 plus points in this game. I really expect that tonight versus the Seahawks defense that just got torched by a Giants offense with Daniel Jones and a bottom 5 offensive line and no Malik Neighbors and no Devin Singletary. The Seahawks, let me pull this up, tell you exactly how many defenders they're missing, because it's a lot of defenders that are out for the Seattle Seahawks, which is why they've been struggling so bad. Let me pull this up. They are without their starting nose tackle, their starting outside linebacker, their starting free safety, and their starting corner. And then there's also without one of their backup outside linebackers. They're questionable. 2 other linebackers are questionable. There's another corner is questionable. Like, this team's all types of banged up. So they have 5 starters injured on the defense. Sorry, 4 starters and 1 backup for one of those starters injured. So 5 guys that really should be starting are out. And then there's another 4 guys questionable dealing with injuries as well on the Seahawks defense. That's why they were just torched by Daniel Jones and the Giants without Malik Neighbors. So I think the 49ers go over 30 plus points tonight. And then you look a little deeper into the 49ers offense this season, guys. This is, unsurprisingly, one of the best offenses in the NFL. With Kittle and Debo and Ayuk and Jordan Mason playing how he's playing, obviously not Christian McCaffrey, but definitely good enough. And Jennings, showing up at times this season too. Definitely one of the better, number 3 or number 4 receivers in the NFL. The 49ers, almost 50% of their possessions are reaching the red zone. That ranks 2nd best in the NFL. Almost half of their possessions, they're getting into touchdown scoring territory. The problem for the 49ers this season is they rank near dead last in converting those red zone drives into touchdowns. They rank 30th. Only 40% of their red zone drives are ending in touchdowns. Last year, they were number 1 in the NFL in that metric. They were almost over 2/3 of their drives in the red zone finished in touchdowns. So I think they'll meet in the middle somewhere here, and likely starting tonight. Expect these red zone possessions to turn into touchdowns tonight for the 49ers. I do think we see them turn it around. I think this is a little bit of variance here just happening to the 49ers. I think they're going to be able to figure it out in the red zone. Again, I would go JSN over Amari. Lockett or Tolbert? Yeah, I think I lean Tolbert there. JSN's a good start, not a must start. Not a great start, but a good start. It depends who you're starting him over. There's 2 sides to every start sit. And yeah, you got to go Kittle over Bowers. You do. There's really only 2 tight ends to start over Kittle. It's McBride and Ferguson. And even those are close. Like, Kittle, guys, he's been the number 1 tight end in fantasy points per game this season. McBride's got a good matchup. McBride actually has the best usage among tight ends per game, and Ferguson's had a really high floor. But I honestly think McBride's like the only must start over Kittle. I think Ferguson's pretty close. Ayuk or Marvin Harrison Jr.? Yeah, it's Ayuk. It's Ayuk of the Bazooka over Marvin Harrison Jr. for sure for me. Do you know if there's been any updates on Puka or CMC? Need them to come back soon, LOL. Yeah, so the latest on Puka and CMC. So by the way, guys, if you haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. We're almost halfway through the fantasy season. You are actively at a disadvantage in your fantasy league without the Walter Picks app. It's free. It's in the YouTube description. It's in the TikTok bio. If you're watching live on YouTube, which you should be, if you're watching live on YouTube, because it's a better viewing experience, you're seeing the Walter Picks app the whole live stream. But yeah, in the Walter Picks app, you can also get the latest news and analysis on every single player for free. And if you look up McCaffrey here, he's going to be in the start sit tool here. They're starting to be a little bit more optimism about McCaffrey. They're saying, after saying that he had tendonitis in both legs, I've seen a timeline. Let's see where we're projecting McCaffrey back. We're projecting McCaffrey back after the bye in week 9. So week 10, I think that's actually a little bit sooner maybe than we'll see Puka Nacua. I think it's a similar timeline. But I've seen some stuff out there suggesting we might actually see CMC in week 8. I expect a somewhat slow ramp up potentially for CMC, depending on where he's at. But I mean, if he's back anywhere near week 10, he's going to be league winner if he can get to full steam by the playoffs, the fantasy football playoffs. He's got a great schedule down the stretch. Does Christian McCaffrey. I'm still buying Christian McCaffrey. I've been buying the uncertainty around CMC this whole time. I think Puka's a little bit less certain, though. Daniel Jones or Stroud, not a Thursday night start sit here. The Giants, they get the Bengals. Stroud gets the Pats. I think I lean Stroud on that one. Start Purdy or Burrow. Yeah, so Purdy, I'm starting over Burrow, and Burrow, I'm starting over Geno. That's how I have it. Purdy, Burrow, Geno. Purdy's a really good start. Sam, my Hawks winning side. Yeah, so Andrew, I don't think the defense will stop the 49ers offense in this game. I do think that the Seahawks offense has somewhat of a chance, but I think that the offense for the 49ers is going to win this game. I do not think the Seahawks win. Is it time to panic on Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think you just got to understand what you have with Marvin Harrison Jr., guys. He's a boom bust wide receiver 2. He's a high upside but low floor wide receiver 2. That's what Marvin Harrison Jr. is, and that's going to be okay for fantasy. He's still going to be a decent start for fantasy most of the season if he can go over 15 points frequently, and he gets games where he's getting over 25% of the targets. He's still been over 23% target share in 4 straight games. The schedule is pretty tough, but the playoff schedule's looking pretty promising for Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think he's a hold. I think just he's not going to have the super high floor. He's not going to be as good as Malik Neighbors when Malik Neighbors plays. But I'm not panicking. Purdy or Fields? Yeah, it's Purdy over Fields. Ayuk or DJ Moore? Man, it's tough to bench DJ Moore versus the Jags. You kind of have to start DJ Moore versus the Jags. Laporta or Kmet? Yeah, so I like Kmet this week. There's only 5 tight ends I'm starting over Kmet this week. It's Laporta, Bowers, Kittle, McBride, Ferguson, end of list. And arguably, you could put Evan Ingram or Tucker Kraft on that list, but I mean, maybe Kraft's on that list. I'm not starting Ingram, though, over Kmet. I'm not starting Kincaid over Kmet either versus the Jets. So, yeah, I like Kmet, but I'm not starting him over Laporta. Do I start Geno or Anthony Richardson? Yeah, I don't know how you could possibly feel good starting Anthony Richardson versus the Titans. Pick one: JSN, Madison, Gibson, Tolbert. I have CD, PPR. I don't hate going Tolbert CD this week. I think that's a pretty good play, honestly. You're going to get, maybe over 40% of the volume to the receivers versus the Lions, who have not been great against receivers this season, and what's projected to be the high scoring game of the week. Like, I don't hate that at all. We got to wait to see what we get, though, from the Pats. Ramondre Stevenson's right now on the wrong side of questionable, in my opinion. He hasn't practiced this week with a foot injury. I was a little surprised that it was a foot injury. He got hurt last week. It didn't look like it was his foot, but JSN versus Tolbert, that's a really close one. Let's actually compare this one quick. And then Gibson's just tough. It's a tough call. Let's compare him too. I don't think we have Mondre predicted out yet. Not the best matchup for Gibson against the Texans either. And we got JSN, and we got Tolbert. Man, Tolbert's going to project the best here. It's Tolbert. It's Tolbert over JSN. It's Jalen Tolbert week. It's Tolbert over JSN. James, how we doing, man? Great to see you back in the YouTube live, man. Appreciate the OGs. I appreciate all the new people in this live. If you're just tuning in for the first time or the first season, but shout out to the people who've been here multiple seasons as well. Everyone get the app. Yeah, if you don't have the app, I don't know what you're waiting for. How's this trade? Brees, Cup, Irving for Mason, CMC, and Waymo, JMO. Yeah, especially if you need to win now. I don't hate this at all. I'm not panicking on Brees, by the way, but you're turning Brees into Mason and CMC, and you're turning Cup and Irving into Waymo, JMO. Like, that's pretty fair trade. I don't hate this at all. And I think, assuming McCaffrey comes back, you're going to want the Mason CMC duo over Brees. And Cup, I think, will be back kind of soon, but I think there's a lot of systemic risk with the whole Rams offense right now. Stafford's dealing with back soreness. They came out and said, let me pull up Stafford here really quickly. And also the schedule for the Rams doesn't get much easier. They get a really rough schedule coming up from week 10 to week 13. Their playoff schedule is not that great. And what do they have? 1 win, 2 wins this season? Like, I feel like they're going to be eliminated from playoff contention maybe kind of soon. And then they're not going to be pushing it with Cup and Puka potentially. So I am kind of nervous just systemically about the Rams offense sustaining for fantasy purposes. So I like that trade. Don't hate it at all. And I think Christian McCaffrey, I want Christian McCaffrey on my fantasy teams, guys, especially if I'm looking like I'm going to make the fantasy playoffs. He's got a great schedule down the stretch. If he can get to full health, you're getting the best player for fantasy. Like, that's just what you're getting. So yeah, I'm happy to take the risk. So you often, guys, in life and in fantasy, you often do have to take a little bit of a risk sometimes to give yourself a chance to win. And I think McCaffrey's, just another example of that. Happy week 6. Happy week 6 to all of you guys in this live stream. I can't believe it's week 6 already. It's been such a fun season. It's been a lot of fun Thursday night games. I think we're going to have another Thursday night fun game tonight. JSN or Tolbert, happy PR. Yeah, it's Tolbert over JSN. We just talked about that one. I think it's Tolbert week versus the Lions. I think Tolbert's a pretty good start. I like JSN tonight too. I would argue JSN's floor is actually even a little bit better in PPR. I don't even know if in a half PPR's floor is better, but the ceiling's arguably better for Tolbert. Thoughts on Wicks this week? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Watson plays. If Christian Watson doesn't play, I think Wicks is going to be another good week where he's a solid flex play. His usage wasn't bad last week. It was really the production and the efficiency was bad. I know you said Caleb over Geno, but can you explain why? Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to explain why. It's because he's playing the Jags. I mean, that's ultimately it. And Caleb Williams, he's gotten better a little bit every single week. Both the first 2 picks in the NFL draft, by the way, projecting his top 6 quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, this has been a really fun draft class. I know the running backs, they haven't smashed, but there's some good running backs in this class too. I think the running backs were a little underrated, honestly, in this rookie class with some good ones that are really looking better than their starters across the league. We haven't even seen Jonathan Brooks yet. Trey Benson's been a disappointment, but Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, starting to look really good. I would start Brock Purdy over Caleb personally, but Caleb Williams projects even better than Brock Purdy in the Walter Picks app because Caleb Williams is playing a defense that has not stopped a soul this season. They've stopped literally nobody. We've seen back-to-back games over 23 fantasy points versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Joe Flacco, guys, threw for 359 and 3 TDs last week versus the Jags. CJ Stroud had 345. Josh Allen had 263 and 4 touchdowns. Tua had 338 passing yards back in week 1. Even Deshaun had his best game of the season versus the Jags. I mean, they've been torched in every single game. And Caleb Williams, we've seen him have a couple good games in his last 3 against bad defenses. Like, he should be doing well against the Panthers. He should be doing well against the Jags too, especially if the Jags offense can put up at least some points and keep this game somewhat competitive. Yeah, Caleb Williams just in such a good matchup this week, which is why he projects better than Geno. Geno leads the NFL in pass attempts per game, but a much tougher matchup for Geno tonight for sure than what Caleb Williams has. But again, I actually like Purdy more than Caleb Williams because I think this is also a really good matchup for Purdy tonight. The Seahawks defense is dealing with 4 starters out. One of their backups to those 4 starters that's out is also out, and then a bunch of guys that are also questionable. And we just saw the Seahawks let up 22 fantasy points to Daniel Jones with no Malik Neighbors. So yeah, I like Purdy tonight for sure. JSN or Lazard? Yeah, I'm going JSN over Lazard. Wilson or Cooper? Not a Thursday night start sit. I think I'd lean Wilson there. Geno or Goff? Yeah, I think I'd go Geno. That one's really tough. I really expect whether or not you expect it, I think you got to at least be real that there's a chance that Goff just doesn't need to do much in this game. When you look at the matchup against the Cowboys, so Goff, he had a good game versus the Seahawks in week 4. Another data point to be in on Brock Purdy tonight. He didn't really do much in the first 3 games where the team was pretty run heavy. And then you look at the matchup for these running backs. I think both running backs in this matchup ranked top 12. Yeah, both actually ranked top 10, Gibbs and Monty, because the matchup versus the Cowboys is just unreal. The only running back that did nothing against the Cowboys was Najee Harris. And even Najee Harris had 10 points last week. Derrick Henry over 30 points, Kamara over 40 points, and Jerome Ford had 20 points back in week 1. They ranked dead last for running backs this season. And if the Lions get a lead in this game, they're really going to lean through the running backs. I think the running backs will have a lot of success too. So I think there's just a floor for Goff in this game because of that. There's still a ceiling because the game's projected to be high scoring. I get that, but Geno's going to be trailing in this one, like almost definitely. The 49ers offense is going to put up points in this game. Geno leads the NFL in pass attempts. Like there's a real chance that Geno throws the ball 40 plus times and that Goff doesn't even need to throw the ball 20 times this week. Like that's huge discrepancy. So yeah, I'm fine going Geno over Goff. Dak or Geno? Yeah, it's Dak. It's Dak over Geno. I'm going Caleb over Geno also. I'm going Caleb over Geno. I'm going Purdy over Caleb. Start Ayuk or Devontae Smith? Yeah, I think I go Ayuk over Devontae Smith. I mean, we haven't seen Devontae Smith, AJ Brown in a game together in a while. I do still like Devontae Smith a lot. I think he's honestly projected maybe a little too low here behind Darnell Mooney. I don't think I'd play Jalen Tolbert over him either, but yeah, I'm going to play Ayuk over Devontae Smith. Interesting flex with injuries. Jennings, Hopkins, Irving, Kraft, or Slayton. Thank you, boss. Yeah, Malik Neighbors is probably not going to play, which means Slayton's going to be in. Man, Slayton coming off a good game. He gets the Bengals. Hopkins is also Hopkins coming off the bye is honestly pretty intriguing. He's got a good matchup versus the Colts. He's been decently effective when he's played. We haven't seen a game where Hopkins plays over 50% of the snaps. Will we see that this week out of the bye? If not, man, it's a lost season, it feels like, for DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe he's one of these guys that could get traded to some of these wide receiver needed teams. I mean, he hasn't played over half the snaps, but he's seen over 30% of the air yards in back-to-back games. I think I'd hold off on Jennings tonight, and I'd wait to see what happens with Neighbors. Then it's between Hopkins and Slayton. I'm not playing Kraft, I don't think, over these receivers. Debo, Jacobs, or Ayuk. Yeah, so I think in fantasy, Debo over Ayuk makes sense. I'd argue that Ayuk actually maybe has a slightly better floor, but Debo's got the higher ceiling. Both, though, have really high ceilings. Like, I like both a lot. So, yeah, I think I would lean Debo personally, because I'm always chasing the ceiling. I think he's got a massive ceiling in this game. But I think Ayuk's got a really good floor and ceiling also. Both guys really good starts. Really close projections too. Brandon Ayuk's actually the free player prop of the night. Over 4.5 receptions as well. Sam, trade Mason and Mostert for Breece. Did I win? Yeah, I think that is a win. Mason and Mostert for Breece, I do think is a win. People are so panicked on Breece, and it does seem like Christian McCaffrey's coming back. The two guys that seem like are coming back, that it feels like it's not getting fully priced in. There's two guys that are seemingly like there's a lot of stuff out there suggesting they're coming back within the next month. And it doesn't feel like that's getting priced into how a lot of people are viewing them. That's Tua and it's Christian McCaffrey. I think, Tua, just the whole Tua situation with the concussions and a lot of people wanting or thinking he was going to retire. And it just doesn't seem to be the case, but that's still just like seeping in. And then just the saltiness of McCaffrey and the uncertainty and just that whole weird situation just feels like there's still some uncertainty that both those guys even come back this season, but actually like over 80% chance in my mind, both those guys will be back at some point this season. So yeah, I think they're both good. I think McCaffrey's a good guy to buy. And I think Tyreek, Waddle, Achane are interesting buys too for that reason. All right, let's go to, again, you got to take some risk. There's obviously some risk, buying these guys. But Breece Hall is also a buy, in my opinion. And Braylon Allen's good. He's not going to just usurp Breece Hall, though. And Breece Hall, guys, he still has the 4th best target share in the NFL. Breece Hall still had 3 straight games over 18 PPR points to start the season. And he's got an amazing schedule. Breece Hall has an amazing schedule. Arguably the best running back schedule rest of season is Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. I think they're both buys. I'm buying both of these guys, especially with this matchup versus the Bills this week. I feel good about both these guys for sure. All right, let's get to this one. Bench one, Mason, James. Yes, James Cook. James Cook might not play this week. He hasn't practiced this week. What are you willing to send for CMC? I think that it depends. It depends where you're at in your league. If you are looking good for the playoffs, I'm willing to send. It also depends on your depth. Like, it depends on a lot, Frankie, honestly. But if you are looking good for the playoffs, like I'm happy to send, my starting flex guy. Maybe I have a slightly worse flex option for the next month, but then I get Christian McCaffrey in the fantasy football playoffs. Like remember, the way to think about this is, how does this affect my chances to make the playoffs? Because if I make the playoffs and Christian McCaffrey comes back, it's going to dramatically increase your chances of actually winning when it matters most in the fantasy playoffs. So it really depends on how much the trade is going to impact your chances to make the playoffs. That's the way to think about it. Your starting lineup points rest of season. I think like Jordan Mason, Chuba Hubbard. Man, Chuba Hubbard's an interesting one to try to trade for CMC, depending on where you're at with Jonathan Brooks on the men. Like, Chuba Hubbard's one of these guys. He's super valuable right now, but his value could potentially drop a lot in the next month with Jonathan Brooks coming back. Purdy or Daniels? It's Daniels. Yeah, Daniels projects as QB1 this week. All right, tonight's game. Purdy or Burrow, QB Ayuk. Yeah, so I personally lean Purdy over Burrow. I think it goes Purdy, Burrow, then Geno. I would play Burrow over Geno, but not over Purdy. It's super close. I actually think they might project like within 0.1 points of each other. A lot of these QBs in this range are really close. Yeah, they project only 0.3 points apart. But you look at the matchup for Purdy, you see what Daniel Jones and Goff both went over 22 points in their last 2 games versus the Seahawks, who are all sorts of injured on defense. Purdy also, he's due for some touchdown regression. This whole team is due for touchdown regression. And part of the reason I like the 49ers in this game is they are due for more touchdowns. They have been the second best the second best offense in the NFL in possessions reaching the red zone. They're reaching the red zone at the second highest rate in the league this season. That's a signal they are a very good offense, but they've really struggled to score in the red zone. I think this is just a little bit of variance that's due to regress, towards the average. Last year they were at 67%. That was second best in the NFL in terms of converting red zone possessions into touchdowns. This year they're at 40%, which is third worst in the NFL. I think they're going to end up somewhere in the middle likely this season. I think that starts tonight against a bad Seahawks defense. I'm down to start Purdy over Fields. I'm down to start Purdy over Burrow, over Geno, over Kirk, over Stroud, over Josh Allen. I'm starting him over all those guys. Is this a good trade? I give Bijan and T. I get Jahmyr Gibbs and Olave. I have Montgomery. Yeah, it's a fine trade. I feel like Jahmyr Gibbs is certainly more valuable than Bijan right now. T. Higgins obviously more valuable than Olave, but by that much, I'm not sure. I think you're losing maybe a little bit of trade value, but I actually don't hate having Montgomery and Gibbs. Like they're two really maybe the only two running backs that I think it's actually a pretty good strategy to have them both and just start both. It's a really high floor and ceiling with those two guys together, and it is possible for both guys to have big games at the same week. Like we've seen that plenty of times. The offense really runs through them. So yeah, I don't hate that at all. Walker or Goff in Superflex. That's a very interesting one. Yeah, some of these Superflex start sits sometimes are really tough. I want to start the quarterbacks. Like my gut says it's Goff, but I feel like the projections here might actually be kind of close because Kenneth Walker's in a good spot. Yeah, it's Goff. It's Goff over Kenneth Walker. When would you start panicking on Breece if he keeps underperforming? Yeah, so I'm going to start panicking on Breece if the receiving role just completely vanishes. And we have seen a little less volume in the passing game, recently. We actually haven't. I mean, he doesn't have a game under 4 targets. He's the second most targets among running backs. This is when I'm going to panic. When Breece Hall is going, he's losing receiving work to Braylon Allen. He's losing receiving work and goal line work to Braylon Allen. The goal line work is definitely, a real concern. I get that. But I'm not going to panic on a guy that's run the most routes among all running backs. He's the second most targets. Like, I'm just not going to panic on a guy like that. I think that I'm just not panicking on Breece. Like, even if he disappoints a little bit against the Bills, the only real world where I'm panicking is if the target volume disappears. I just think that's super unlikely to happen. Like, extremely unlikely. So I'm buying Breece. It feels like everyone's panicked on Breece just based on the comments I see. People are fully panicked on Breece. I think it's a pretty good buying opportunity. He's got arguably the best schedule in the NFL at running back rest of the season. And he's second in targets and he's first in routes among running backs. I think only Kamara has more targets than him. Mason, James Cook, Connor, DJ Moore. Yeah, this one's Mason. Actually, is it Mason or is it? Oh man, DJ Moore and Mason are super, super close. I think it's Mason over DJ Moore. You can't start James Cook. Don't plan on James Cook, guys. He hasn't practiced this week. It's possible he plays, but for Thursday night start sits, you just got to assume he's not playing. Anyone that has not practiced this week for your Thursday night start sits, assume they are not playing. James Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, Malik Neighbors, Josh Downs, Rashid Shaheed. None of these guys have practiced this week. That's very concerning for their outlook. I think you got to assume they're not playing. All right, so I'm going Mason over DJ Moore. Yeah, the floor is maybe just a little bit better. Such a good matchup for DJ Moore this week. It's such a tough guy to bench, especially in PPR leagues. He's coming off a massive, massive game. Definitely a tough call here. But yeah, I think I'd still go Mason, who leads the NFL in carries and gets a really good matchup tonight. Hey, Sam, should I drop Rice? Yep, Connie, you're good to drop Rice. I had to drop him in 4 of my 7 high stakes fantasy leagues. I mean, brutal stuff, man, with Rice. But I'm not going to be, I'm not a moper. Like Rashid Rice, he was a good pick. Injuries are going to happen. This is why I'm grinding the waivers all season. It's why I'm grinding through trades. It's why I draft for depth, and I'm locked in drafts in rounds 12, 13, 14, 15, because I know injuries are going to hit, and they're going to hit everyone's teams, really. Like, everyone's teams are going to get hit with injuries. So, yeah, I'm not out here complaining about Rice, but, yeah, you can definitely drop him. Definitely can drop him, and that's brutal stuff. DK, DJ Moore, Terry, and Diggs, pick 3. Yeah, so you're starting DK here. You're starting DJ Moore here. Terry and Diggs is close. I think it might be Terry over Diggs. Both good options. Oh, man, they actually back-to-back. It's Diggs over Terry. Man, really close one. Really, really close one. I think that's reasonable. I'd bench Terry before, but definitely start DK tonight for sure. DK over Deontay for me. I'm playing all 3 of the top receivers in this game over Deontay. I don't think that's what the Walter Picks app is projecting. That's how I would play it, though. AD Mitchell, if no downs. Yes, Brody. AD Mitchell is like a must-add right now, I think, in fantasy. Because not even if no downs, Brody, Michael Pittman's out. He's not playing this week. And he might go on IR. He might miss 4 weeks. And the thing with AD Mitchell, his target rate, the percentage of the team targets he's getting when he's on the field is actually extremely high. He just hasn't been on the field that much. And he's just almost definitely going to be on the field way more. It's a little less exciting with Anthony Richardson versus Joe Flacco, which is crazy to say, but it's definitely true. But yeah, I'm fine with adding AD Mitchell and potentially starting him this week if Downs is out too. full PPR, and I'm 3-2. Start DK, Debo, Godwin, Brian. Yeah, if you're 3-2, you're 2-3, guys. You got to win these weeks. You got to make the right start sits tonight. All right, DK, Debo. That's why we're here. Oh man, Godwin versus DK and Debo. I'm starting DK and Debo over Brian Thomas Jr. I don't know if I'd start them over Godwin though. Either of them. Yeah, you got to start Godwin over. Yeah, so this one's really Debo versus DK because you can't bench Godwin with how consistent he's been. I think there's honestly an argument to at least think about benching Godwin just because the game environment versus the Saints might not be great. But I think you kind of have to start Godwin. I personally lean Debo over Metcalf. Metcalf's been better this season. He's coming off one of his worst games this season too. I think both these guys will bounce back tonight. Man, I'm going Debo over Metcalf. It's a tough call, but the matchup's just way better for Debo than it is for Metcalf. Way better. Should I drop Charbonnet and pick up Spears, Roschon, Madison, Tracy? Maybe Spears. I don't think I'd drop him for Roschon. No chance. And I'm not dropping him for Madison. I don't think either. Like this still, if you just think about the ceilings for each of these guys. Tracy's ceiling is kind of interesting, but I do think Singletary will still mix in. And I don't think Tracy's going to get like this workhorse role as good as he was. Eric Ray looked pretty good too. I don't think they're going to give him, 80% of the snaps or anything. Whereas like Charbonnet and Spears, like these guys have real ceilings. If their counterpart misses time, they're both handcuffs. But if Pollard misses time, like Spears could get to a 70% snap share and should absolutely smash. And we already saw it with Sharp. I think you just hold on to Sharp, especially for the game tonight. With them playing tonight, hold on to Sharp, I think, over these guys. Kenneth Walker or Goff and Superflex PPR. Yeah, I think I got to them when it's Goff. All right, guys, that's my time on the YouTube Live. Again, I think the 49ers score a lot of points tonight and beat the Seahawks. I like Brandon Ayuk of the Bazooka over 4.5 receptions. I think you need to start Mason, Walker, Ayuk, Debo, Metcalf, Kittle, and Purdy. And I think JSN, Geno, Lockett, and Juwan Jennings, they're all decent starts in that order as well. I definitely feel better about JSN over Lockett and Jennings. I feel okay about Geno, but I prefer Burrow, Purdy, Love, Caleb, Dak, Jalen Hurts, Kyler, Lamar, and Daniels over him. So you're not going to start him in many leagues, but he's startable for sure. Guys, that's my time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight. As always, I'll be back live Sunday morning. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube so you don't miss it. Talk to you all soon. Good luck, everybody.